where we have lots of common ground here is the answer to this problem is generally mindfulness, right? And the answer to the food problem is generally mindfulness. The answer to the information consumption problem is generally mindfulness. If we're paying attention to what it is that we're eating rather than scarfing something down at our desk, we have a higher probability of eating healthy when we're paying attention to what it is that we're consuming. I suspect that's the case. The reason I wrote The Information Diet, well, there are lots of reasons I wrote The Information Diet, but one thing I learned about The Information Diet, and the reason why I named it The Information Diet, just sort of came out with it, is, you know, The Information Diet, if you're looking for hard answers in The Information Diet, you're going to be greatly disappointed. The intent of The Information Diet is really to start a conversation, not to complete one. It would be, I think, arrogant of me to say, like, this is the information diet that fits all Americans. And in fact, you know, I think where my metaphor actually really breaks down and is actually quite bad is that cauliflower affects you and I in roughly the same way. Unless we've got a pretty severe food allergy or something like that, cauliflower and Cheetos have roughly the same effects on all of us compared to someone here reading a paper on physics and me reading a paper on physics. I'm unlikely to even be able to digest that paper on physics or understand it, whereas a physics major or someone who understands physics in a marginal point of view would be able to understand it a little bit better. And it's very rare to find someone who is, you know, unable to digest something because they haven't eaten enough of it. I think, you know, in an ideal world, you're right, there would be lots of journalists who add lots of value to various sources. But I think that I just think that that's happens few and far between compared to the media that we're, you know, the media that we should be consuming. And that, you know, yes, of course, it is a big ask to ask for people to, you know, check out source material every once in a while and make up their own mind, which is really what infoveganism is. But I also think it's vital to health to not just to be skeptical about what journalists are telling you, and to understand that the story that you're getting is more often than not the whole story. It can't possibly be. As soon as it's documented, it is not the whole story. It might be a better story, but it's certainly not the whole one. It can't be. We do not have the kind of technology that can capture the whole story. But I think it's valuable to encourage people to get as close to the whole story as they can. And that's the premise of infoveganism. I want to, you know, again, in the idea of the information diet comes from, I was reading about the history of actual diet books, and where they came from, because I noticed in the bookshelves that in the bookstore there used to be bookstores where you could go and buy physical books, and you know, I was walking through the diet aisle and I saw the 4-Hour Body, the 8-Minute Miracle, the 18-hour fast or something like. I mean, it was like this idea that I just had the idea that maybe we were producing so many diet books that diet books are now causing obesity, because no one can actually get to what is actually causing obesity. Because if basically someone can tell me that what I need to do in order to not be obese is to drink honey, lemon juice, and cayenne pepper every day as my only meal, which, yes, is an actual diet, a popular one, a strangely popular one, then I feel like that's actually causing more harm than good. And so this guy, William Banting, actually wrote the first Western diet book, And Banting, it was in the mid-1800s. And he was an undertaker who couldn't walk downstairs. And Britain had gone through its own sort of industrial revolution, or agricultural revolution at the time, and had a surplus of food, so obesity was something relatively new for a lot of people. And you know, he wrote a book called A Letter on Corpulence, and a lot of people from the medical community picked on him and was like, well, duh, eating lots makes you fat. We've known that for a long time. Being fat is bad for you. But what Banting was trying to do wasn't to convince doctors that being fat was bad for you. What Banting was trying to do was convince people who weren't doctors that being fat was bad for you. The other interesting thing about Banting was that when Banting wrote the book, the calorie was a unit for measuring the efficiency of steam engines. The science wasn't there yet. The science wasn't even close to being there when Banting wrote A Letter on Corpulence. But it was worth starting that discussion. I'm glad he did start that discussion. The Banting diet is I think, a foundation for a lot of diets that we have today, whether a lot of the generally more healthy ones that we have today. We've known about this problem for a while. And so the intent here, again, is really to not provide you with all the answers. It's more to start a conversation. I'm glad we're having. We should be willing to pay for content is because that's what's going to get us the Pentagon Papers again, right? Because everything is ad-driven, right? I'm responding in direct to one challenge that you made about who solves societal problems. If everything is ad-driven, that means that every piece of content has to be sensationalized. You know, Barack Obama has a big problem with white women, has to be the article because that gets the most page views and that drives the most profit, right? But if we're actually, you know, NPR does a good job of this, you know, they're not ad-driven. They are, in fact, subsidized by people who care deeply about them reporting quality news. And so if you listen to their fundraisers, you're like, look, give WBUR money because we are working hard for you. We're being of service to you. Not Barack Obama has a big problem with white women in order to get their money, right? And so being able to say, okay, look, New York Times, I'm going to give you $6 a month. In return for that, I don't want to see any advertisements. Start setting the economics of this news production in the right direction. Now, the other companies have tried this, like Slate, I think, or Salon tried this for a while. But I think, you know, the New York Times tried a paywall in 2000. It failed, and then they tried it again. And it may be time to try the ad-free model, pay for ad-free model again. The question I want to get to is who solves societal problems? This question of can elites solve societal problems? At least that's what I think the real question was can high-end consumers actually solve this problem in a grassrootsy kind of way? I think if you look through history, elite consumers, disposable income, highly intelligent consumers have solved, highly active, I don't want to say intelligent, rather I'll say people with disposable incomes who care deeply about a product have managed to create a lot of change in the past. Whether it be through, I think, what we're seeing now, and please argue with me about this because I'm not sure I know what I'm talking about, but my idea, I believe that Walmart is after the Whole Foods customer, right? Like Walmart needs the Whole Foods customer in order to grow because they've got no place left in the United States to grow except in urban markets where Whole Foods is dominating, and China. They've got really no place else to grow in the United States. This is why they're building a Walmart 3. It's of no surprise that Walmart is building a Walmart 3 blocks from my house, and that they're saying, oh, we're going to put local organic food in this place where there's a food desert, right? Like they're doing that to lure customers. The organizational or state level stuff just sort of breaks down, right? It works for food, but it doesn't, like, we have to start with individual responsibility when it comes to our information diets, because immediately when an organization purports to say, here is what's true and what's false, it's discredited by the people who want to believe that it's false instantly. Imagine if we did have a strong state-sponsored media in this country, and it was the New York Times, right? Let's imagine that the New York Times was completely state subsidized. Imagine what people who hated Barack Obama would do to it in the event that, like, I mean, the New York Times would be entirely discredited if it was state-sponsored. And in fact, NPR, for a lot of people, is entirely discredited because they take public funds and because they purport to report the facts that some people disagree with.